What's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and today I'm going to be talking about my top 10 favorite Game of Thrones characters. Now, Game of Thrones is a TV show that I absolutely love. It's probably one of my favorites of all time. I've seen seasons 1 through 7 at least twice all the way through every single episode. But certain episodes I've seen 4, maybe even 5 times. I really do love this show. Season 8, I don't really like to talk about. I think that it's one of the worst endings to a TV show ever. I just am not a fan of a ton of the decisions that were made there. I think the writing was really off, but just because I didn't like the one season doesn't mean that it's an awful show. I think 7 seasons are really, really great. Some of the best TV ever, and the characters are really what make this show so fantastic, and so I figured I would sit down today and I would give you my top 10 favorite characters from that show. Before I give you guys my list, definitely head over to Danny K Reviews channel, as he is also doing a top 10 Game of Thrones character video. Go check out his channel, subscribe if you haven't, and I know he's a big Game of Thrones fan, so I'm excited to sit down and do this ranking. And one final warning, there will be some spoilers for Game of Thrones because it's really hard to talk about this show and the characters without giving spoilers regarding their character arcs. So if you have not seen Game of Thrones, I highly recommend you watch that show, and then you can come back here and check out this video. And if you don't care about being spoiled, then hey, welcome to the video. One other thing before I give my list is there are certain characters that I think are really great, well-written characters. They're just not my personal favorites. Honestly, it comes down to the villains. Like, I like the villains. I think they're great. They're just not on my personal favorite because I think more of a positive connotation when I think of these characters. So the following characters I think are great. They would be very high on a best characters list, but because it's my personal favorites, they didn't make the cut. And those are Joffrey Baratheon, Ramsay Bolton, and Cersei Lannister. Now, all 3 of these are the best villains in the show. They're just not my favorite characters. Now that that's out of the way, I do have some honorable mentions. My honorable mentions that didn't quite make the list are Ygritte, Oberyn Martell, Robb Stark, Sansa Stark, and Daenerys Targaryen herself. Now, this is a character that I know a lot of people have at number 1, so don't hate on me too hard. She's a really great character. I'm just not a fan of what happened in Season 8, and I've always found her a little overrated. I know she's super badass and cool, but she's not in my personal top 10. So coming in at number 10 for me is Jorah Mormont, aka Jorah the Andal, son of Jeor Mormont, and he's just so cool and wise. I love seeing him as he accompanies Daenerys in the earlier seasons, and then of course the whole betrayal plot line is very interesting, but Jorah is just one of those characters that I love to root for. Coming in at number 9 for me is the wildling himself, Tormund Giantsbane, who is a hilarious character. Anytime he's on screen, and especially his interactions with Jon are so intriguing to me. I love how he's rocking the red beard, and he's just such a fierce, brutal, gruesome warrior. Tormund Giantsbane is just one of those characters who has great banter. He has some really great quotes that are just so hilarious, and like I said, he's just so badass. Coming in at number 8 for me is Brienne of Tarth, played by Gwendolyn Christie, and this is the role I think she will always be remembered for in my eyes because Brienne is so awesome. She's just such a cool warrior, and I think she could go toe-to-toe with anyone in the Game of Thrones universe, quite frankly. Her backstory I can really feel for, especially her duo with Jaime Lannister in the 3rd season of the show. They're one of the best duos in the show, and you get to really feel for her and get some of her background as far as how she was viewed as a kid as almost a monster because she was so much bigger than everyone else, and she wasn't ladylike, and I think that they really handled that well in the earlier seasons of Game of Thrones. She's very loyal, as she's loyal to Catelyn Stark, as she said, I'm gonna find your daughters. She's very relatable and one of the coolest Game of Thrones characters. Coming in at number 7 for me is Davos Seaworth. Now, this is not gonna be the typical top 10 pick for a lot of people, I don't think, but I've always loved Davos. He's not the warrior type, but he has a lot of wisdom, and especially seeing how he acts as a father figure almost to Stannis' daughter as she is an outcast with Grayscale, and then of course the tragic relationship with his own son at the Battle of Blackwater. It's very heartbreaking stuff, so I've always liked seeing his interactions with the rest of the cast. Davos has a lot to offer whenever he's on screen. He could deliver some great dialogue, and he's just an interesting character to me. Coming in at number 6 is Ned Stark himself, played by Sean Bean, and right off the bat I'm just going to say Sean Bean needs a break. I feel like this man dies in every single movie or show that he's cast in. It's almost become a running joke at this point, but Ned Stark is the main protagonist of the 1st season of Game of Thrones, and they actually kill him in the 9th episode of Baelor, one of the best episodes of the show. It's crazy to me that they had the guts to kill him off. Unfortunately, I was spoiled for this before I watched the show. However, it didn't take away from it. I think his character is a great starting point for the rest of this show. He's mentioned throughout the entire show. Like, his presence is felt as it impacts every single character in the show. He's only in 9 episodes of the show, but he comes in at number 6 for me because he's just that great. So before I give you guys my top 5, definitely consider hitting the like button and comment your top 10 favorite Game of Thrones characters down below. Who's your favorite? Who's your least favorite? I would be interested in hearing all that stuff. But coming in at number 5 for me is Jaime Lannister, one of the best written characters in any television show, as at the end of the first episode, he pushes Bran Stark out the window and says,
"The things I do for love."
And you really hate this guy as he's having a relationship with his sister, and then you see him in that first season. He's such an evil person, what he does to Ned Stark, and you just can't really root for this guy. But then, of course, as the seasons go on, you start to sympathize with him more, really start to feel for him when he loses his hand. From that point on, his character completely changes. He becomes one of my favorites, and his relationship with his brother Tyrion is very heartfelt. Brotherhood relationships always get me in the feels, and their scenes, their back and forth, how they always have each other's back, very brilliant stuff. And while I'm not crazy about the way Jaime's character arc finished up, he's still one of my favorite characters. Coming in at number 4 for me is Arya Stark, arguably the most badass character in all of Game of Thrones. I mean, she goes from being the little girl, the daughter of Ned Stark, to seeing some brutal things and becoming the girl with no name. I love her arc. I think that she has the best in the show, quite possibly. She can go toe-to-toe with anyone in the show. Her duo with the Hound is my favorite in all of Game of Thrones, and anytime she's on screen, I'm usually interested to see where she's going. The storyline with Jack and Hagar, very like weird and eccentric on the fantasy side of Game of Thrones, but still intriguing nonetheless, and I really do like to see how she gets revenge on certain people, how she has the list of names of people that she's going to kill. I wish she got to take out more of those people in the final season, but overall, she's a great character. Coming in at number 3 for me is Tyrion Lannister, played by Peter Dinklage to perfection. He has multiple Emmy wins for his performance. Tyrion is the smartest character in the show, at least for the first 6 seasons. Everything he does, I'm like, this guy just knows what's up. He's so clever, the way he manipulates things and how he's so smart from a political standpoint. The moment that really stands out for me with Tyrion is in season 4, when he's on trial for allegedly killing Joffrey Baratheon. And he delivers this fantastic monologue that gives me chills every time I hear it.
I did not do it. I did not kill Joffrey, but I wish that I had. Watching your vicious bastard die gave me more relief than 1,000 lying whores.
Tyrion is just so interesting and intriguing, and you really can feel for him as he is honestly bullied for most of his life because he is a dwarf. People pick on him constantly, and seeing him just get justice for himself throughout and fighting for himself and just having so many wits about him. I drink and I know things. It's hard for him to miss the top 3 for a lot of people because he is one of those iconic Game of Thrones characters. Coming in second place for me is Jon Snow himself. This is probably the most iconic Game of Thrones character. Jon Snow. Everyone knows that name, I feel like. If you just walk around and say Jon Snow, they're like, oh, Game of Thrones, even if they haven't seen the show. Jon is just such a good person at heart, one of the few truly good people in the show. He's believed to be a bastard throughout most of the show, and then of course you find out he is Aegon Targaryen, the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. And it just baffles me how brilliantly they write this character, as he's not really one of the main leads early on, and then he becomes the main character of the show by the end, essentially. It's between him and Dany. I wish we got to see the epic showdown between the Night King and Jon Snow. One of the biggest missed opportunities in this show, in my opinion. Kit Harington will always be remembered as Jon Snow. You know nothing, Jon Snow. But coming in at number 1 for me. Now, this could be pretty controversial, but I want to clarify it is my favorite, not the best, and I really don't care about the whole best favorite thing. But my favorite Game of Thrones character has to be Sandor Clegane, aka the Hound. Anytime this man is on screen, I am either laughing because he's so funny and just does not care about what he says, or I'm like, this dude is a badass because he can take anyone on. The story about how his brother stuck his face in the fire, leaving him with the wounds, and how he got the name the Hound is just so captivating to me. In the Battle of Blackwater Bay, when he has the moment where he leaves Joffrey and he rescues Sansa, I've always been a fan of him since then, but even since the beginning, I've always been like, something about this character intrigues me. And then you see him with his duo with Arya in this 4th season, which is my favorite season of the show, and I just love how they interact, they bounce off each other. The way he's like always poking fun at Arya, but then they have these jokes, especially like involving a chicken. And it's interesting that this character was killed off in season 4, yet he came back in season 6 with a bang. I was like, are they really going to bring him back? And when they did, it was my favorite moment the first time I ever watched the show. I was like, yes, it's the most hype I've ever been because I love the Hound so much. The Clegane poll delivered. It was one of the few things in season 8 that I was a massive fan of, and just seeing him wail on the mountain, his brother, the duel we've been waiting for. I wish it might have been a little grander, but he ultimately went out the way he got his wound as he fell into the fire, but he took out his brother with him, and they had to go out together, and that's why I just love Sandor Clegane the Hound so much. He's the most memorable character from the show, in my opinion, and he's my favorite. Yeah, so that's a wrap for my top 10 favorite Game of Thrones characters. Hope you all enjoyed. Like I said earlier, definitely head over to Danny K Reviews channel. Check out his top 10 ranking of the Game of Thrones characters. You guys can compare. I'm sure there's a lot of different picks because there's so many Game of Thrones characters. Definitely consider hitting the like button. Comment your favorite Game of Thrones characters down below. I'd be interested to hear that. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. It would mean the world. I've got a lot of content planned in the future. Live streams, podcast episodes, collabs, all that good stuff. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.